And so can we just put this to bed? I just need an answer from you, Justin, because you know better than anybody. Everybody watching, our true crime fans that are watching, something on Netflix, it's not always the spouse, right, Justin?
Yeah, not all, it's not like
The Lifetime movie.
Lifetime shows. The guy is not always bad. Okay, can we finally get some balance here? It's not always the husband's fault, or all men are bad. Help us out here.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. My wife loves those shows, the Lifetime and the true crime shows and all where they wrap a murder up in 15 minutes and they, a murder happens and then they go knock on John's door and they get him in handcuffs and like, got him, it's John. That is not law enforcement. That is not, they're skipping so much stuff. But there are people in the police world that actually, that kind of have that mentality, that kind of have that, like, well, obviously it's the husband, and we'll use, for example, the case that I was telling you about with the lady who was in the nail salon and got stabbed in the neck. When she was stabbed in the neck, she was at the nail salon and she got stabbed in the neck. At that time, we had officers go to her house. As they go to the house, the husband they had 2 kids. He was packing the kids up in the car and driving away. And they call us. They're like, hey, he's packing the kids up in the car and driving away. It's like 9:00 on a Friday night. I'm like, well, follow him for a little bit and see where he's going. Well, again, we're in Mesa, Arizona. He's heading south. Like, he's heading south.
Mexico.
Like, he's almost to Tucson. What do you want us to do? Pull him over. Like, just pull him over and just see what's up. So I pull him over and like, hey, what are you doing? I'm just taking the kids and going for a drive. Do you know where your wife is? I think she's getting her nails done. Do you know anybody in Tucson? No, we're just going for a drive. All right. Get him back here. So, so that's super duper suspicious. It just comes to find out he was a weird guy. He was just a weird guy. So what, did we have a heightened sense of something suspicious going on? Absolutely. But you can't and there are some people who are like, oh, book them now. Just book them, and be done. Like, whoa, hold up. Like, let's actually do an investigation and do our jobs and prove, because you don't just pick somebody and then prove it. Your evidence will tell you who does this. So then the more research we did, and then through DNA and help from the citizens, we ended up identifying the suspect, and it was just a random guy. It was legitimately a random guy who hated women. He had a sign outside of his door that said the B word, all suck. He just had this distaste for women, and he was walking by her there, and for whatever reason, because again, for whatever reason, he stabbed her. We proved that. When we went to go arrest him with the arrest warrant, he did come out of his home. And he pointed a gun at police officers, and lethal force was used, and he did not survive. So we don't have the full details, but there was a lot of animosity towards women, and it just looked like it was just a random attack on someone. So yeah, so it's not always the husband, it's not always the wife, it's not always the person you think it's going to be.
Right.
It's not always the neighbor. Those are good places to maybe look at and think about. But don't just go putting handcuffs on people. And that's what people get wrong, because they see it on the Netflix and they're like, oh, it's this person. Oh, right. I know it's this person.
Yeah.
And no, you don't. You absolutely do not know that.
I'm going to ask you this question. This is one that's always fascinated me. Is you've got a missing person, or a child has been abducted, or a murderer that you've caught, and he admits he did it, but he won't tell you where the body is. Do you guys ever go to psychics, seers, clairvoyant individuals who may help you find a missing person or even a missing body? Has that ever come up in your homicide investigation?
Not currently, but I actually worked a cold case from 1980, and I actually solved it. It was because when you become a homicide detective, you also inherit all the cases from your detectives previous to you. And it was a 1980 homicide case that happened on Super Bowl Sunday. And they basically ran out of leads. DNA wasn't a real big thing back then. They didn't have a lot of cell phone technology. There wasn't a lot of evidence to go along with this. And they kind of ran out of leads. And they actually did hypnosis on a couple of people that they thought were involved. And then they actually had a clairvoyant person. Come to find out, none of those actually were real. None of them led to the right thing, because we had DNA evidence and go that way. I personally have not seen them use that, mainly because we have so much other data and information that's available to us. But as a case agent, I've always looked out as a case agent. Your job is to solve that case no matter what. Your only function in life is to solve that case. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care how weird it is. You solve that case. I've never ran out of leads to use a psychic, but I would. If I ran out of leads, I would absolutely do it. I have solicited information from other countries on cases that they have done evidence. They've done, I had one case where a guy was shot through a door. It was like a drug deal gone bad. It was and they were like tugging at the door, and the bad guy shot through the door, hit the person on the inside, and killed him. The only real evidence I had was a bullet casing. We could not find any fingerprints or DNA on that casing. Well, I read an article about a guy in the UK that developed a process to develop latent prints on casings. So I actually called him. Well, I emailed him first. He was like, "Yeah, call me." So I called him. He worked for New Scotland Yard, and he basically was like, "Oh, I got a fish tank with saline solution and 2 car batteries. When you put the brass cartridge into this solution and electrify it, it advances the corrosion where fingerprints sit." And he goes, "I was able to develop fingerprints, and we got a conviction on that." So I'm like, "Hey, will you do that with my evidence?" And our courts were like, "We can't. I don't know if we can even justify that." But my job is to solve the case. So I said it to him. He did get fingerprints, and we couldn't identify it to anybody, but we did get fingerprints. And it was a thing where they're like, if this goes to trial, I don't know if we're going to have to do this, or if we're going to be able to allow this. But the guy in UK said, "Just subpoena me. I'll come to America. I'll explain it, how it works." He's like, "I'm a scientist. I have, all kinds of degrees, and it works." So, you do have to think outside of the box, but I've never gotten to the point where I've had to use a psychic. But honestly, I would not hesitate in a heartbeat if I had no other evidence.